Welcome back to another episode of Exiled Strangers. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing all right, but man, I'm hungry.
What are you trying to do? It's about that season now. You could go down there and get you some of them mud bugs where you bite the tail and suck the head. How does that sound?
Ew, gross, man.
And that's right. Today's podcast is talking about eating clean and unclean. What animals we can eat and what animals we can't eat. And those filthy little bottom feeders are not on the list of things we can eat.
Yeah,
So,
you'd be.
and a lot of people think that. Go ahead.
My bad. I stepped on you. I just,
You're good.
it's surprising how disgusting the lives of some of these creatures are.
Yeah. And also, like, in the instance of crawfish and stuff like that, or crawdads or mud bugs, depending on where you live, like, we're getting into increasingly more contaminated living situations and stuff. Like, the environments where these crawfish or where these pigs or where these different types of animals live are becoming filthier and filthier. And a lot of these animals' jobs, a lot of their, like, the purpose that they serve is to actually filter out toxins, is to actually, like, decontaminate the living circumstances or these ecosystems, or the bottom of the ocean or the bottom of the lake or the bottom of the stream, or going through and contaminating or cleaning up some of the dead rotten carcasses within the forests or in the
Yeah,
pastures, or anything like that. Like, they're just not fit for human consumption.
yeah.
um
Dude, I was
and
driving
that's just
today.
how it is. It's
I was driving today, and I saw some vultures just chowing down on some squirrel guts, and I was like, "How fitting that we're talking about this topic today." You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's not to say that these animals are just like we should eradicate them because they're just, you know, filthy animals and stuff like that. That's not what I'm saying at all. They serve their purpose. It's just one of their purposes is not, for human consumption.
Yeah.
Um and like, I'm not saying this from like an elitist standpoint. Like, this was one of the hangups that I had in particular with pigs. Um when I first started walking this way was like, okay, like, for example, I raise pigs, and I raise pigs cleaner than any kind of controlled animal feeding operation, any kind of large scale farm. Like, they are very, very, as far as pigs go, they're about as clean as you can get. Um, Meaning, like, their living conditions and their diet and stuff like that. And I always had, I this was just one of those things that I had a hang up on.
Yeah, I think many people do, and it's okay. Like this is, that's I think people have this mindset when they are being exposed to any kind of instructions from the father, where they're like, "Ah, that's too much. I can't do it all." It's like an overwhelming feeling. You know what I mean? Um, and
Absolutely.
the reality is that we just slowly learn and go along. Like he will teach us in increments that won't overwhelm us, and as you go along, you get a fuller and fuller picture. So take the stress out of your lives, people. It's all good.
Yeah. And, like, honestly, dude, I was one of those people beforehand where it was like, hey, man, every part of a pig tastes good. Like, every part of
Sure.
it. And then I
Yeah.
finally had to come to the conclusion, like, well, okay, so an interesting little side note was that when I would do the carnivore diet, like, when I did it beforehand, like, it was like pig just did not sound good. Like, it never
No.
sounded like appetizing or anything like that. I always wanted it like a ruminant type meat. Pork just never sounded good, which seems odd, doing like the carnivore diet and stuff. But I finally had to come to the conclusion, like, do I understand this with pigs? Even though I raise them in a clean manner, like, do I understand with this with pigs? Not fully. But my father loves me. He knows what's best for me, and I'm gonna obey him because I love him as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that's the perfect attitude, right? Because I mean, I think we all think we know what's right to do in our own sight. I've been guilty of this many, many times. You know, and at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
day, the only place you can land that's safe is being like, oh, well, the father said this, so I just better do it. Whether I fully understand it or not,
Yeah.
he'll bring me into that understanding as time goes on. you know. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Now,
and
before we get into the topic, oh, go ahead.
one more thing. So I have always been a big fan of pepperoni pizza, specifically pepperoni and mushroom. Like that's my jam. And
Yeah.
recently I started eating pepperoni pizza again because I found turkey pepperoni, and I can't tell the difference. Now, granted, I haven't eaten pork in a minute, but like my taste buds are happy. You know what I mean? So there's options out there, people. Um, yeah.
So I will say this: like, if you buy that, it comes in a red bag, that kind of pepperoni. I can't remember. It's like Hormel or something like that. I would say you might actually be safe because chances are there ain't a whole lot of real meat in that pepperoni. All
Well,
the artificial flavorings, the additives, and all that type of stuff. You might want to check the ingredients, and you might not see any pork on that list. It might
it's
just be straight up like synthetic,
yes, synthetic.
which I would argue that's probably not clean as well. Like the
Probably worse.
yeah, it's probably worse for you. But oh, that brings me into a whole nother thought, but I'll save that. So yeah, before we get into the topic, a little bit of housekeeping. If you want to sign up to give your testimony on Exiled Strangers, then shoot us an email at exiledstrangers@proton.me. That's exiledstrangers@proton.me. And yeah, yeah, we'd love to have you on the podcast. It's completely anonymous. Remember, we do this anonymous because this information and what we're saying is not about us. We don't want to glorify us. All glory to be to the Father. And
Amen.
yeah, get
Yeah.
into the
Hey,
topic now.
yeah, but real quick, think about it for a second. Process like this fake meat, the lab grown meat, right?
I was
You
thinking
know
the
what?
same thing.
Do you know what that is? Like, think about it real quick. That's robot poop.
Okay, I wasn't thinking that. Yeah, you're right. That is
I,
robot poop.
I
But
mean,
you know
really?
what it also doesn't have? It doesn't have a cloven hoof.
No, it
It
does
doesn't
not.
have a cloven hoof. Like, I don't think that this just popped into my head, but I don't think that manufactured like factory meat is actually meat. I mean, it
No,
would actually be clean.
yeah, no, it's straight up robot poop, and you should not be eating it. Um, think about genetics wise. I mean, we can go into this all day, but I'm just saying, like
Right.
who knows? They're putting COVID mRNA something or other into like beauty products now, like into facial
Mm-hmm.
things. It's they're doing everything they can. So
Yeah. Yeah. For
I
sure.
probably shouldn't have said those words. Now that I'm just like thinking about it, they're probably still catchwords. My bad.
That ain't the worst thing we've said on this podcast. Or not bad, not even meaning it's bad, just offensive to yeah, certain groups of people.
To algorithms, yeah.
It's algorithms. Which isn't that the name of a demon?
It wouldn't surprise me. I don't know, but that wouldn't surprise me. We should look that up at some point.
I remember listening to a episode of Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis, and he was breaking down the what was it, the etymology of algorithm, and how it actually has ties to some ancient Babylonian demon.
Oh, tight.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, right. So you want to start this off by? So I think it's a good idea to start this off by defining what is clean, like defining what the Bible says we can and can't eat, what's clean food, what's unclean, and stuff like that. And that starts us off in Leviticus 11.
yeah, so this is like the handbook for eating this chapter here, and you get bits and pieces of instruction here and there too, but like it's pretty simple. You want to know how the Father says we should eat? Just go to this chapter and check off the list. You know what I mean? It's simple.
Yep,
Um,
yep,
yeah, you want me to start off?
yeah, you got it. Just if you get tired of reading, just hand it off. I'll be following along. Are you in the
Cool.
Septuagint?
I mean, I can. I'll probably just read it out of the scriptures today. Um,
Okay, if you read out of the scriptures, then I'll follow along in the Septuagint and see if anything differs.
cool. All right, it says, and Yahweh spoke to Moshe and to Aharon, saying to them, speak to the children of Yasharel, saying, these are the living creatures which you do eat among all the beasts that are on the earth. Whatever has a split hoof completely divided, chewing the cud among the beasts, that you do eat. Only these you do not eat among those that chew the cud, or those that have a split hoof. The camel, because it chews the cud but does not have a split hoof, it is unclean to you. And the rabbit, because it chews the cud but does not have a split hoof, it is unclean to you. And the hare, because it chews the cud but does not have a split hoof, it is unclean to you. And the oink, the pig, though it has a split hoof, completely divided, yet does not chew the cud, it is unclean to you. Their flesh you do not eat, and their carcasses you do not touch, they are unclean to you. These you do eat of all that are in the waters. Anyone that has fins and scales in the waters, in the seas, or in the rivers, that you do eat. But all that have not fins and scales in the seas and in the rivers, all that move in the waters, or any living being which is in the waters, they are an abomination to you. Dang, not just unclean. They're an
Yeah.
abomination to you.
Yeah.
It says they are an abomination to you. Of their flesh you do not eat, and their carcasses you abominate. All that have not fins or scales in the waters are an abomination to you. It's driving it home. And these you do abominate among the birds. They are not eaten. They are an abomination. The eagle and the vulture and the black vulture and the hawk and the falcon after its kind. Every raven after its kind, and the ostrich. Oh, what about those ostrich
Oh
eggs?
man,
Don't eat those. And the nighthawk.
I've eaten a
And the
few of those.
same. I have in my past. Well, once, but it says, and the nighthawk, and the seagull, and the hawk after its kind, and the little owl, and the fisher owl, and the great owl, and the white owl, and the pelican, and the carrion vulture, and the stork, and the heron after its kind, and the hoopoe, hoopoe, and the bat. Okay, don't eat those. And most of these don't sound very appetizing. These are mainly birds of prey or like flying rodents, you know. The ostrich is an
Yeah.
interesting one, right?
Yeah. That one. Okay, so the ostrich doesn't show up in the Septuagint. I wonder if there's like an alternative name for that, because there are quite a few bird names in the Septuagint that I do not recognize.
No,
Um, like
the
yeah,
kite.
like night raven,
Yeah,
red bill, stuff like that. The hoopoe, I definitely don't know what that is.
yeah.
But
I don't know to be honest. Even the apostolic polyglot says the purple-legged stork. It's like not any stork, but those with the purple legs. No, but yeah, it's interesting. And perhaps it's because they are some freaky deaky dinosaurs. You know what I mean? Ostriches are crazy.
it could be. Yeah.
No, never mind.
Yeah.
I'm not getting into the dinosaur thing. And all right, that's a whole other wormhole there. I was
Yeah,
just
what do you get?
messing
A
around.
fallen angel plus a chicken?
Yeah, you get this.
Ostrich.
Ah! Yeah. All right, verse 20 it says, all flying insects that creep on all fours is an abomination to you. Only these you do eat of, every flying insect that creeps on all fours, those which have jointed legs above their feet, with which to leap on the earth. These of them you do eat. The arbe locust after its kind, the solam locust after its kind, the hargol locust after its kind, and the hagab locust after its kind. But all other flying insects which have 4 feet are an abomination to you. And by these you are made unclean. Anyone touching the carcasses of any of them is unclean until the evening. And anyone picking up part of the carcass of any of them has to wash his garments and shall be unclean until evening. Every beast that has a split hoof not completely divided, or does not chew the cud, is unclean to you. Anyone who touches their carcass is unclean. And whatever goes on its paws, among all the creatures that go on all fours, those are unclean to you. Anyone who touches their carcass is unclean until evening. And he who picks up their carcass has to wash his garments, and shall be unclean until evening. They are unclean to you. And these are the unclean to you among the creeping creatures that creep on the earth: the mole, and the mouse, and the tortoise after its kind, and the gecko, and the land crocodile, and the sand reptile, and the sand lizard, and the chameleon. These are unclean to you among all that creep. Anyone who touches them when they are dead becomes unclean until evening. You want to pick up on 32? I just realized I'm just hogging the whole chapter, bro.
No, you're good. Let me switch over to the scripture so we can be on the same page. And whatever any of them in its dead state falls upon becomes unclean, whether it is any wooden object or garment or skin or sack, any object in which work is done, it is put in water, and it shall be unclean until evening, then it shall be clean. Any earthen vessel in which any of them falls, whatever is in it becomes unclean, and you break it. Any of the food which might be eaten, on which water comes, becomes unclean, and any drink which might be drunk from it becomes unclean. And on whatever any of their carcasses falls upon unclean, an oven or cooking range, it is broken down. They are unclean and are unclean to you. But a fountain or a well, a collection of water, is clean, but whatever touches their carcass is unclean. And when any of their carcass falls on any planting seed which is to be sown, it is clean. Which shows me composting is fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, but when any water is put on the seed, and any part of any such carcass falls on it, it is unclean to you. And when any of the beasts which are yours or food dies, he who touches its carcass becomes unclean until evening. And he who eats of its carcass has to wash his garments, and shall be unclean until evening. And he who picks up its carcass has to wash his garments, and shall be unclean until evening. And every swarming creature, the one that swarms on the earth, is an abomination. It is not eaten. Whatever crawls on its stomach, and whatever goes on all fours, and whatever has many feet among all swarming creatures, the ones swarming on the earth, these you do not eat, for they are an abomination. Do not make yourselves abominable with any swarming creature, the one swarming, and do not make yourselves unclean with them, lest you be defiled by them. For I am Yahweh your Elohim, and you shall set yourselves apart, and you shall be set apart, for I am set apart. And do not defile yourselves with any swarming creature, the one creeping on the earth. For I am Yahweh, who is bringing you up out of the land of Mitzrayim, or Egypt, to be your Elohim. And you shall be set apart, for I am set apart. This is the Torah of the beasts and the birds and every living being, the creeping creature in the waters, and every being that swarms on the earth, to make a distinction between the unclean and the clean, and between the living creature that is eaten and the living creature that is not eaten.
Boom.
For he is Yahweh our Elohim, which puts a stamp on it there.
Yeah.
Like,
And that's exactly it. Like, just because he said so. Like, I'm okay. Even if I don't fully understand certain things, or like,
yeah.
I can be a bit of a knuckle dragger. So if you have some, like, unclean animal that's dead, and I go drag it out and just toss it in a hole and bury it or something, or, whatever the case, like,
Mm-hmm.
to me, I'm like, okay, I'm going to wash my hands and I'm all right. I mean, but like, he says you're unclean till evening. Okay, so be it. You know what I mean? Like, this is
Yeah.
just something that he has prescribed. And he says to wash your whole body, which is just fine with me too. Like, go take a shower, you dirty kids. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, which is hard to argue. Like,
yeah,
if you touch an animal, you should probably go, bathe afterwards. Like, don't skip bathing that day.
Yeah, like the the whole washing with water thing is just it just makes sense practically, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
And I have pigs. Like, I interact with them, I mean, almost every day. Like, not every day do I actually touch them, but I go feed them and give them water and move them every day.
hmm,
Um, I don't move them every day, but I interact with them to some extent every day. So
yeah,
it's not like I'm saying like, oh, you should never touch these animals or anything like that. Like, you're doing wrong by coming in contact with these animals. Right now, these animals are serving a purpose for me. They're clearing a new growth forest so I can get access and start cutting stuff down and reclaiming some of that land for pasture, for silvopasture, so sheep can then be brought in and I can start eating some animals.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. And the thing is too is you're
but
not if you
yeah,
touch them, you're not unclean, right? It's if you touch their carcass, like their dead carcass. So that like throws in that whole
oh
other
yeah,
element to where like what happens in the process of decay. You know what I mean? So rapidly, perhaps
yeah,
in these different animals. Um, and what's interesting too, it talks about any of these little creeping creatures, like if they like die, like in there in a bowl or whatever else, like it's like get rid of that bowl, you know. And
yeah,
I don't know, like I just haven't really come across that I can remember in recent years, but it does happen. You know what I mean? Especially if you got a stack of bowls like in the back of your cupboard or something. Something to think about, like I don't know. I guess
yeah.
we won't get into the ins
Or
and outs of. Go ahead.
if you have like rat poison out and like the rat takes a nibble and then walks over, like crawls over to like your dish cupboard or something like that and dies in one of your dishes, that totally happens.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I just say, if it's me at this point now, I'm just gonna be like, all right, let's throw this dish out with the rat. Like, you know,
Yeah.
he,
Got a
he
new
said,
shooting target, the
yeah.
dish.
Oh, we're going like a Western shooting gallery now, are we? Yeah. Hiya! Pow,
Yeah,
pow,
dude.
pow, pow.
Might as well make it fun. Are you there? You froze up for a second.
Yeah, my bad. Little crazy
Okay.
weather coming
No, you're
through.
good. Got some technical difficulties, but y'all are used to that.
Yeah. Hey,
So,
if anybody's not aware, like infrastructure in the United States isn't the best. It's pretty good compared to a lot of other countries, but it's not the best. You know, um,
yeah, I mean, surprisingly, yeah, that is accurate. Um, so one of the rebuttals to why we no longer need to eat clean is Acts 10 and Peter's dream.
yeah,
So you want to go ahead and break that down for everybody? So just so you guys know, we presented like what is clean, what is unclean, and then we're going to offer the rebuttals that are given to why we no longer have to eat biblically clean anymore, and we're going to
yeah,
kind of try to break those down as best as possible. So
yeah,
starting in Acts 10, like Peter's dream is something that comes up. Like I remember my in-laws brought this up whenever we were telling like them, "Hey, we're eating clean now." Um, Acts 10 is brought up. So
yeah. And I've heard this. So
let's go ahead and dissect that.
I've heard this argued so many
Go
different
ahead.
ways too. Like, and it's interesting too. A lot of people in the mainstream, uh, mainstream train of thought, they won't even say like, "Oh, the Messiah did away with all the laws." They'll just go to here. Peter had a dream and said that all things are clean because they think it says something that it doesn't. I've even heard people say the correct interpretation of this and say, and it also means that we could eat all foods. And I'm like, well, where are you pulling that from? You know what I mean? Um,
Yeah. And
but
we should also set the precedent that like we can all agree that Yahuwah does not change, right? He is the same today as he was then, as he is forever, right? He does not change. So, like, for him to all of a sudden say, okay, that food is clean now, that would indicate some sort of change has happened, right?
no.
I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, and everybody kind of forgets the point that like all of these animals that they say are unclean, they carry a lot of like parasites and bacteria, all this kind of stuff, because they either, like you mentioned earlier, they either like are kind of like the filters for certain ecosystems, or they're like animals of prey and they eat decaying flesh. Like it's,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyways, it's not like all of a sudden they don't do those things and their actual flesh itself has become like healthy for us. Like there's a practical nature to Yahweh's instructions, you know. Um,
Yeah.
any
Yeah. These
anyway,
animals serve a purpose, just not as
yeah,
food.
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
All right, Acts chapter 10. It says, "Now there was a certain man of Caesarea called Cornelius, a captain of what was called the Italian regiment, dedicated and fearing Elohim with all his household, doing many kind deeds to the people and praying to Elohim always." So what we have out of the gate, first two verses, is we have somebody who would be considered a Gentile of the nations, right? Who has
Hmm.
decided and set his heart to follow Yahweh. It says here, he was dedicated and fearing Elohim, right? So doing many kind deeds. He's got some good right behavior going on. All right. It says he clearly saw in a vision about the ninth hour of the day a messenger of Elohim coming to him and saying to him, "Cornelius." And looking intently at him and becoming afraid, he said, "What is it, master?" And he said to him, "Your prayers and your kind deeds have come up for a remembrance before Elohim. And now send men to Yaffo or Joppa, and send for Shimon, who is also called Kepha," so Simon Peter. "He is staying with Shimon, a leather tanner, whose house is by the sea." And when the messenger who spoke to him went away, Cornelius called two of his household servants and a dedicated soldier from among those who waited on him continually. And having explained to them all, he sent them to Yaffo or Joppa. Okay, so we get a really cool look at Cornelius, right? He fears Yah, he keeps his commands. He's a praying man, his whole household, like they're doing good enough to where the remembrance of what he's doing has come up before Elohim.
Hmm.
All right, so verse 9, it says, "And on the next day, as they were on their way and approaching the city, Kepha went up on the housetop to pray about the 6th hour. And he became hungry and wished to eat. But while they were preparing, he fell into a trance. And he saw the heavens opened and a certain vessel, like a great sheet, bound at the four corners, descending to him and let down to the earth." It's like a cool picnic. Um, it says, "In which were all kinds of four-footed beasts of the earth, and wild beasts, and creeping creatures, and the birds of the heavens. And a voice came to him, 'Rise up, Kepha, slay and eat.' But Kepha said, 'Not at all, master, because I have never eaten whatever is common or unclean.' And a voice came to him again the second time, 'What Elohim has cleansed, you do not consider common.' And this took place 3 times, and the vessel was taken back to the heavens. And while Kepha was doubting within himself about what the vision might mean, look, the men who had been sent from Cornelius, having asked for the house of Shimon, stood at the gate. And calling out, they inquired whether Shimon, also known as Kepha, was staying there. And as Kepha was thinking about the vision, the Spirit said to him, 'See, 3 men seek you. But rise up, go down, and go with them, not doubting at all, for I have sent them.' So Kepha went down to the men who had been sent to him from Cornelius, and said, 'Look, I am the one you seek. Why have you come?' And they said, 'Cornelius, the captain, a righteous man,'" so he's keeping Yah's ways, righteousness, "'and the one who fears Elohim, and well spoken of by the entire nation of the Yahudim, was instructed by a set-apart messenger to send for you to his house and to hear words from you.' So inviting them in, he housed them. And on the next day, Kepha went away with them, and some brothers from Joppa went with him. And the following day they entered into Caesarea, and Cornelius was waiting for them, having called together his relatives and close friends. And it came to be that when Kepha entered, Cornelius met him and fell down at his feet and bowed before him. But Kepha raised him up, saying, "Stand up, I myself am also a man." And talking with him, he went in and found many who had come together. And he said to them, "You know that a Yehudi man is not allowed to associate with or go to one of another race. But Elohim has shown me that I should not call any man common or unclean." So
Bam.
there's the interpretation right there of all the beasts of the earth. He's likening the difference between Jew and Gentile. Yehudi or Greek, so those in Judea that are keeping the ways, and the nations that are being evangelized. He's saying, yo, Kepha, stop it with this dispensational thought. Like
Yep.
I said, go out to the highways and byways, go out to the nations.
Mm-hmm. So that a lot of people use those verses as an example of like, don't call unclean, like they take it and they apply it to food, when clearly that, like, if you just keep reading, you can very clearly see that that was not in reference to food at all. That was in
Yeah,
reference to Jews versus Gentiles. Like, yes, go speak to everybody, not just Jews. Speak to everybody.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, and I've noticed like a lot of confusion when it comes to scripture is solved by just like keep reading. Either read before the verse that had confusion or after the verse that had confusion, and usually you get a clarifying answer. Not saying that applies all the time, because there are still some mysteries in scripture to me, for
yeah,
sure. Um, but like the majority of the time, the answer is in scripture.
yeah, absolutely. I'm going to continue on reading, actually, because it's going to drive home the point a little more. So after he says, Elohim has
Do it.
showed me not to call any man common or unclean, he says, that is why I came without hesitation when I was sent for. So I asked, why have you sent for me? And Cornelius said, 4 days ago I was fasting until this hour, and at the 9th hour I prayed in my house, and see, a man stood before me in shining garments, and said, Cornelius, your prayer has been heard, and your kind deeds were remembered before Elohim. Now send to Jaffa or Joppa, and call Shimon here, who is also called Kepha. He is staying in the house of Shimon, a leather tanner by the sea. When he comes, he shall speak to you. So I sent to you immediately, and you have done well to come. And now we are all present before Elohim to hear all that you have been commanded by Elohim. And opening his mouth, Kepha said, truly I see that Elohim shows no partiality, but in every nation he who fears him and works righteousness is accepted by him. He sent the word to the children of Yasharel, bringing the good news, peace through Yahusha the Messiah. He is master of all. You know what word came to be throughout all Yehuda, beginning from Galil after the immersion which Yochanan proclaimed. How Elohim did anoint Yahusha of Nazareth with the set-apart spirit and with power, who went about doing good and healing all who were oppressed by the devil, for Elohim was with him. And we are witnesses of all he did, both in the country of the Yahudim and in Jerusalem, whom they even killed by hanging on a timber. Elohim raised up this one on the 3rd day and let him be seen, not to all the people, but to witnesses, those having been chosen before by Elohim, to us who ate and drank with him after he arose from the dead. And he commanded us to proclaim to the people and to witness, that it is he who was appointed by Elohim to be judge of the living and the dead. To this one all the prophets bear witness, that through his name everyone believing in him does receive forgiveness of sins. So, anyways, I wanted to keep going there because when he starts to speak the message that Cornelius sent for, right? He sent for Kepha to hear to be ministered to uh, by Kepha. So he says, "Truly, I see that Elohim shows no partiality, but in every nation,
Yep.
he who fears Yahweh and works righteousness, so keeps his commandments, is accepted by him." He just like, where in there does it say to go eat a big pork sandwich? You know what I mean? Like, I don't see it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's very clearly talking about like the nations, not food at all. Otherwise, he came to the wrong conclusion.
Yeah, yeah. And you got a lot going on here, and it specifically says that the set apart spirit, the Ruach Hakodesh, is what told and instructed Kepha on what the vision meant. You know, I ain't gonna
Yeah.
argue with the Ruach. You know,
Nope.
that's dangerous waters right there. Um,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah,
so
you're gonna lose every time.
yeah, there's no way to come out ahead with the spirit of truth. I mean, that's
Yeah.
literally, you know. Um, okay, so Peter's dream, everybody, has nothing to do with your lunchtime choices. You know what I mean? It
Yep.
has everything to do
Yeah.
with the house of Yahweh being opened to every nation, tribe, and tongue. It's beautiful.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, there's not much to add to that. Like it's said right there, and like the question is answered just by reading further. The context is like the true meaning of that dream is revealed later in the text.
And then,
So, do
that's
you
the
want
interesting.
to move on? Oh, go ahead. My bad.
No, that's just the interesting part about when people reference Peter's dream, because not only do they not read the end, but they completely dismiss the beginning when it describes a man of the nations, right, Cornelius, and it describes that he
Mm-hmm.
is converted and is following Yahweh. You know, um,
Yeah.
that gives us our like preparatory context before going into the vision Peter had. But
Yeah. And if
anyway,
this had to do with anything about food, then there's a lot of extra detail that just doesn't make sense. Like if this was pertaining to food, this dream, then why did we get the rest of the story? Like, why did we
yeah,
get the rest of the backstory?
if it pertained to food, it would have been like Peter had this sick dream where this big picnic blanket came down and all this food, and then he went down to the bazaar and he chowed down on a big pork bratwurst, or he went and bit the head
Yep.
off a bat. You know, like that's not what happened
Yeah.
here. Um,
No.
yeah. So
So,
look, the other,
Mark 7.
yeah, I was gonna say the other one that everybody tends to go to on this is Mark 7. And these are the words of the Messiah here. So we're going to go ahead and start at verse 14. It says, "And calling the crowd to him, he said to them, 'Hear me, everyone, and understand. There is no matter that enters a man from outside which is able to defile him, but it is what comes out of him that defiles the man. If anyone has ears to hear, let him hear.' And when he went from the crowd into a house, his taught ones asked him concerning the parable. And he said to them, 'Are you also without understanding? Do you not perceive that whatever enters a man from outside is unable to defile him? Because it does not enter his heart, but his stomach, and is eliminated, thus purging all the foods.' And he said, 'What comes out of a man, that defiles a man. For from within, out of the heart of men, proceed evil reasonings, adulteries, whorings, murders, thefts, greedy desires, wickedness, deceit, indecency, an evil eye, blasphemy, pride, foolishness. All these wicked matters come from within and defile a man.'" But everybody I talk to about this one always goes to like, look, he says, whatever goes into your stomach doesn't matter. It won't defile or make you unclean. And it's like, well, hold on a second. One, where there's a difference between the word defiled and unclean, right? There just is. Anyways, without getting into that too much, he's using like the human digestive system as a metaphor saying like, look, you know what happens when you eat some food? It just comes out as poop, you know?
Yep.
Like he's like, so the same way, like whatever enters into you, so whatever you're exposed to isn't what defiles you, but it's what you allow to come out of your heart based on that. You know what I mean? If you give in to those
Right.
wicked desires. Because if you go on the premise that he's saying all foods are clean, then literally in verse 20 it says, and he said, what comes out of a man, that defiles a man. That means every time you go to the bathroom, you're coming out defiled. You know, if you want to go with
Hey,
those lenses.
sometimes after a certain Mexican restaurant,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm pretty defiled
Okay.
after
Well, I'm just saying. Hey, bro,
that.
have you heard of poopery?
Yeah. That stuff you spray in the toilet bowl.
Bro, that stuff actually works pretty good.
It
I'm just playing
depends
out
on the smell. Some of them are like, man, this is almost worse than that stinky dump.
there. Okay.
Some of
All
them,
right.
I don't know. Some of them just don't work out right. Some of
Yeah.
them you just smell poopery and poop.
Yeah.
But
Hey,
yeah, some of them aren't too bad.
I'm just saying, man, like, you know, if you're going over to a friend's house, like to a party, and your tummy doesn't feel too good, and you're like, oop, I might not be able to make it the whole night, it could be a good strategy to pick up some poopery. You know what I mean? Um,
Oh man.
and we are not a sponsor of poopery, but if they're listening, you can send us a couple bottles, you know?
Maybe I'm just the type of person that's like, yeah, we're all gonna suffer with this one.
Oh, man. Oh, so you're the kind that comes out and leaves the
Okay.
door. Wait. You're the kind that comes out and leaves the door open and it wafts into the living room?
Oh man. Okay. So what's the reasoning for using the poopery? To make sure nobody knows you took a dump in there? All right. So
Yeah.
if they smell poopery, they're gonna know you're trying to cover up something, and then like the assumption might be worse.
No,
Maybe
no.
the correct route to go is just like, hey, it is what it is.
No, you're wrong. You're wrong.
This is
All
what's
right.
going on.
So let me tell you why you're wrong. So if you use some poopery, right? Spray, and then you have full like bombs away moment. Okay, bombs away,
Yep.
and
Paint the bowl.
quick flush. And then someone's like, "Hey, who used poopery in here?" And you'd be like, "No, it's not poopery. I started using Lumi, so I use Lumi on my butt, and that's the smell you're smelling." There's a
Either way, you got problems.
it's a multi-layered defense. Okay.
Or you could just make life simpler and hey, it is what it is. I took a fat stinky dump in here. What are
Yeah.
you gonna do about it? It's already done.
Hey, hey. Or there's the whole thing we talked about on the preparedness videos. Just go take a dump outside. You know,
Yeah, there
so
you
long as
go.
the party's not in the backyard, just you should be fine. You know.
Bury it though. Don't be filthy. Bury
Oh
it.
yeah. You got to bury it.
And use the right leaves. Use
Yeah.
the correct leaves. Oh, that was one thing I forgot to. Mullein, by the way, y'all. Mullein is an excellent leaf to wipe with. It is soft. It is thick. It's not going to break on you. You know,
Yeah.
it is what it is.
Oh man. You know what? You know what, dude? Like our little rabbit trails are getting better and better. I love them. I love them.
Yeah.
If anybody can't be instructed by both the real important stuff here, the scripture, and then our silly rabbit trails, like I don't know what we're doing. But
Shoot. They ain't listening. They ain't paying attention then.
yeah, because everybody poops, you know?
Yeah.
All
Everybody does. All right.
right.
So another one that's been brought up to me. Everybody poops, dude.
There's somebody in my life who's going to listen to this episode, and that person's going to be like, how did you guys get on the topic of poop again? Like, again.
We might be in the body of adults, but
Yeah.
we're actually just 9-year-olds.
Make no mistake. Oh, boy. All right. So, what were you saying, bro? Sorry.
Oh man. Oh, you're good. So another like argument that's been presented to me was now I will say the person who presented this argument was like scraping the bottom of the barrel. Like it was just a lazy rebuttal at this point.
Yeah.
Uh, so also a little side note, I enjoy arguments. Now, argument doesn't mean like you're yelling at each other and you're mad at each other or anything like that. But to me, an argument is a discussion between two different points in search of truth. Like, what
Yeah.
is the actual truth about this? Um, Not everybody enjoys arguments. A lot of people, or not even a lot of people, but some people get flustered and angry and they can't hear an opposing thought or idea without having like an emotional response. So that is kind of setting the scene when this was presented to me with the Genesis 9. Um, well,
Okay.
you want me to go ahead and read it? I got it pulled up. Um, so Genesis 9, and then we'll go backward and forward around Genesis 9 to provide context. And
Yeah.
so just starting in verse 1, and Elohim blessed Noah and his sons and said to him, be fruitful and increase and fill the earth. And the fear of you and the dread of you is on every beast of the earth, on every bird of the heavens, and all that creeps on the ground, and all and on all the fish of the sea. Into your hand they have been given. Every creeping creature that lives is food for you. I have given you all as I gave the green plants. But do not eat flesh with its lifeblood, with its life, its blood. Hold on. Sorry. 9:4 is, but do not eat flesh with its life, its blood, but only your blood for your lives I require, and from the hand of every beast I require it, and from the hand of man. From the hand of every man's brother I require the life of man. And then it goes on to like, do not murder and stuff like
Right.
that.
Right. Right.
But right there, it says, every creeping creature that lives is food for you. I have given you all as I gave the green plants. That was
Interesting.
presented as an argument as to, like, go ahead and you, like, so Noah is before Moses, but Noah seems to have been told, like, every creeping creature that lives is food for you. So there's a couple different ways you can like dissect that point of view. You could say, well, that was before Moses was given the law. Like this isn't the correct argument, but it is another argument to combat
Sure.
the that argument. There is like, okay, well, or Noah was before Moses. Like this was before the law of unclean and clean food was given. That's an easy argument there. But if you do more dissection into this, was it meat that we looked up or that you looked up?
Yeah.
The definition of meat?
So they translate it in the scriptures as food, but Septuagint, even the KJV reads meat.
Yeah. So the ancient Hebrew definition, um, the pictograph of the palm is a picture of the bent palm, or the pictograph. It's a picture that you guys can't see right here. Is a picture of the bent palm representing the bending or subduing of the will. The It looks like a J, is a picture of the shepherd's staff or yoke. Combined, these mean tame for the yoke. An animal or land that is tamed has been worked and is complete and ready to use. Taming include construction of holding pens, putting the soil to the plow, harvesting of crops, milk, or meat. One eats once the harvest is complete. So it's basically it, to me it reads that he's giving dominion of all these animals to Noah.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Because the
Almost
context, right?
saying like, hey, you're
Yeah.
greater than these animals. Like
He's literally finishing his thought from verse 2, where it says, the fear of you and the dread of you is on every beast of the earth, on every bird of the heavens, on all that creeps on the ground, and on all the fish of the sea. Into your hand they have been given.
right.
It's just
Yeah.
finishing off that thought. The problem with this is like the Strongs, Strongs will say to consume, devour, eat food, meat. But meat has a different definition there. This is like it is basically at your disposal. You have power over it. This you had to be careful with Strong sometimes. They have a different set of lenses they're looking through when they're giving definitions. Um,
Now, real quick before we get into the pairs and everything, to me this also gives a sense of responsibility.
mm,
Like if it's under your dominion, then it's also your responsibility to take care of it.
yeah,
And to take care of these animals, to take care of them, but also take care of their environment. Because if they're in a sick environment, then the animals are going to be sick and stuff like that. But like these are under your charge, and if they're under your charge, then you have a responsibility to take care of them. Which means like just like 90% of the crap we do in this earth probably shouldn't be doing if
yeah,
it's ruining the environment of what we've been given charge over.
yep. I agree. I agree. That's like
Yeah.
you're to perform husbandry on the land and with the animals, and take care of them.
Right. That doesn't mean go through and wipe out all the lions. It means, provide a good habitat for the lions. Or it doesn't mean like go through like, oh, we came to North America and then we wiped out almost all the bison. That's not what that means. It means like you said, perform husbandry with the bison, like responsibly harvest the bison, but also like leave an environment that is still suitable for the bison. Which means don't do like the mainstream methods of constantly tilling the earth, which created the Dust Bowl, which creates a horrible environment. Like there was one spot in Kansas that I know of that still has like legit native prairie grass
Hmm.
and like those species and stuff. Um, so yeah, I'll get off my soapbox and stuff like that. It just seems like we're given dominion over these guys. We're supposed to be taking care of them and providing a correct environment. By no means am I like some crazy tree hugger, and I think that these animals' lives are greater than humans. Not thinking that at all. It's just, there's a difference between killing the lion that is attempting to attack the camp versus killing the lion so I can mount it on my wall.
Yeah, yeah, that pisses me off. Um,
Yeah.
hey, real quick, you said tree hugger, and it reminded me that I was at the hardware store the other day, and I saw this guy wearing a T-shirt, and it had an image of like a tree stump, and then a tree falling over, right? Like it had just been cut, and the caption on the T-shirt said,
Mm-hmm.
"Don't worry, I hugged it first." And I just thought
Oh, dude.
I thought that was the coolest T-shirt.
That's awesome. That's a good response.
Yeah,
That's a good response. I've been cutting down some trees in that new growth forest, and I've been receiving a little bit of hate for it lately. So that'll have to be my new response. Don't worry, I hugged it first.
yeah. Don't worry, I gave it a little love.
Yeah. Yeah.
All
Oh
right.
man.
So yeah, like look, that argument using Genesis 9 there, it gets like saying like this is before Sinai, that the instructions and weren't there before then.
Mm-hmm.
It's a total lie, right? Like modern day Judaism says that the Torah, so Yah's instructions came at Sinai, and that's not true. That's not true. They're eternal. They've been around forever. If we look at Genesis 7, starting at verse 1, is it cool if I read this, bro?
You got it.
All right. It says, "And Yahweh said to Noah, Come into the ark, you and all your household, because I have seen that you are righteous before me in this generation." And you guys, righteousness is walking in Yahweh's ways, you know, keeping his commands.
Yeah.
It goes on to say, "Of all the clean beasts, take with you 7 pairs, a male and his female. And of the beasts that are unclean, 2, a male and his female. And of the birds of the heavens, 7 pairs, male and female, to keep offspring alive on the face of the earth. And after 7 more days, I am sending rain on the earth," right? So this is right before the flood. And he says, "Of the clean beasts, take 7 pairs." They got to eat while they're on the ark. You know what I mean? The earth was flooded for
Yeah.
150 days. And he's clearly speaking to Noah like he's not telling them which beasts are clean or unclean. He's saying, hey, the ones that you already know are clean, like take 7
Right.
pairs. And the ones you already know are
Yeah.
unclean, just take a pair, you know?
Yeah.
That kind of destroys the whole idea that instructions came only at Sinai. But
Right.
what do I know, man? I just make poop jokes over here, you know?
Worse than that, you use potpourri.
So if
Yeah,
you're wondering why
embrace the funk.
yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, I don't always use poopery. In fact, I think I've only used it once or twice. But when I did, I felt safe. I felt like judgment was far from me. Okay. Maybe it was just like a mental thing where I'm like, okay, nobody knows I just had to take a number 2, you know?
Oh man.
Yeah.
Oh man.
There you go. It happened again in the same episode. It came up again.
Oh yeah.
We're
Oh
gonna
yeah.
just we're just gonna see
Poop
if it'll come
jokes.
up in every episode. Here's the thing: is it mentions
It
instruction for
probably
going.
will.
Yeah, and there's instruction in scripture for going to the bathroom. So I feel like that gives us free reign to discuss going to the bathroom.
Well, absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely. It's
to
a function that everybody does.
yeah, to a degree. And if anybody's kids are listening, I bet that they're cracking up laughing every time we say poop. I bet
You're
it just
welcome.
happened. Yeah. Yeah. It's a happy
Yep.
day for the whole family, guys.
Yep. Oh man. So yeah, I think that like as far as the clean eating, as far as like what we can eat, and then some of the common rebuttals, I think we did a decent job in like presenting the argument for you guys. Um, like yeah, we're still supposed to eat what we're supposed to eat, and we're not supposed to eat what we're not supposed to eat. It still applies.
And if I may, like this is something that I
Yeah.
did when I was like coming to understand that we're to still walk in Yahweh's instructions, all that applies to us, you know. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and this is a tip that I heard Rob Skiba say, and he used this in reference to like biblical cosmology, but it works across the board. If you go to the Father in prayer and ask the Father to remove your preconceived notions, your biases, all the doctrines that we've been taught that are not accurate, and ask Him to reveal His truth in whichever matter, like the Father will certainly answer that prayer. Like He is a rewarder of those who diligently seek Him. Um, Take it there first and then continue studying, and I guarantee that the Ruach is going to reveal the truth of the matter to you. And don't stress, because
Yeah.
I'll speak for myself. Like, I used to eat all kinds of unclean meat. I used to eat shrimp like crazy, you know, the little cockroach of the
Yeah.
sea. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
praise Yah for
Yeah.
His mercy.
No, yeah, dude, I used to destroy pigs. Like I could easily eat like a pig's worth of ribs at a sitting, like in one
Yeah,
sitting. Um, I used to, every part of a pig was tasted to me at that time, but no longer. Like the original reason I have these pigs was yeah, I was still cleaning up the new growth forest and stuff like that, but also I intended on eating these pigs. If I
yeah,
didn't, I wouldn't have gotten so many. Like, not only did I intend on like eating these pigs, but I intended on filling my family members' freezers with the pigs.
yeah,
Like that was the full blown plan. Now, I can't do that. So I intend on they're going to be, you know, cleaning
yeah.
new growth forest for me, and at that point, once they've completed their job, I'll see if somebody else needs pigs to clean up their new growth forest for them.
Yeah, they're
Um,
literally brush hogs, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
and they do like if anybody has some new growth forest and they're like, man, I wish this would be like more of like a more comfortable forest to walk through and stuff like that. Pigs do a fantastic job. In fact, there's this famous farmer named Joel Salatin, and he refers to them as like little 4-wheel drive bulldozers. Like the front of their nose is a shovel.
That's awesome.
Yeah, they do a fantastic job. And okay, let's say none of these other arguments, like you just can't remember the other arguments or the other scriptures or something like that. You can always go back to Matthew 5:17, where Yeshua is saying, "Do not think that I came to destroy the Torah or the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to complete. For truly I say to you, till the heaven and earth pass away, one yod or one tittle shall by no means pass from the Torah till all be done. Whoever then breaks one of the least of these commands and teaches men so shall be called least in the reign of heavens, but whoever does and teaches them, he shall be called great in the reign of heavens." So, like that right there, that is the like checkmate to anybody saying that, you know, Yeshua came to abolish the law. Because he says right there, "Do not think I came to destroy the Torah or the prophets."
And when are heaven and earth going to pass away?
Well, we're still here, so
And
I don't know.
I would say a big old never. Yeah, it gets think about it, like it gets, like, what's the word, terraformed? Is that
That's a word.
yeah, but like where you like change the landscape, like cause it to be inhabitable. It's like that goofy idea about
Yeah.
Mars. If you could get out the dome, and if Mars is a
Oh,
real
yeah.
planet.
Mhm.
Yeah, like basically the kingdom's going to refashion the earth. And Jeremiah 31 says if any of these like ordinances, the signs and stuff in the heaven, the sun and the moon, pass, so like exist from, or, excuse me, if they stop from being a thing, then Yasharel will cease from existing before Yahweh. So it's like that's not going to happen. He's just straight up telling you, like,
Yeah.
don't worry. I'm going to keep a remnant forever.
Mhm.
Yeah, great. I'm glad you brought
Yeah.
this up, bro. That was perfect.
Yes, man. Just try to put a cap on that.
Yeah.
Well, you got any final words for the listener so far?
Oh, I don't think so today. This is, I think, a good, fruitful discussion, man.
Yeah, me too. Guys, don't forget, like if you want to sign up for a testimony, then hit up exiledstrangers@proton.me. That's exiledstrangers@proton.me. If you want to, I mean, that's the email you can send like your sign up for the testimony. Also, if you want to, like, if you have any comments or questions or like, you know, hate mail, all that type of stuff, you can send it all over to there. Also, if you're listening, whatever podcast player you're listening on, go ahead and leave a review. It helps out the podcast quite a bit. It helps show the podcast to other people who are, you know, on their podcast player. And if you're on YouTube, leave a comment, hit the thumbs up button. Go ahead and subscribe to us. You know, do all
Yeah.
those good things if you want to help support the podcast. And
Yeah.
yeah,
We're fun. We're fun.
yeah, we tell poop jokes and
We do more
stories.
than that, but we also do that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a well-rounded podcast here.
Yeah.
All right. So until next time, we'll see you guys.